It is an honor for me, Mr. Prime Minister, to be here as a special envoy to you of the Brazilian Foreign Minister, Antonio Patriota, a mission which I perform with great satisfaction. As requested by Ambassador Magalhães, I will provide you with an overview of the role and the structure of the Latin American Integration Association, ALADI, as the acronym in Portuguese and Spanish, and provide you with some ideas on how St. Kitts and Nevis can benefit from strengthening its ties with ALADI. I will also present some trade figures that evidence how strong trade within ALADI has been in the last years and the importance it had in mitigating the effects of the international financial crisis. However, before I go into further comments about ALADI, I wish to express my sincere thanks to the government of Guyana for its unequivocal and total support of the accession of St. Kitts and Nevis to the partial scope agreement that exists between Brazil and Guyana, and the protocol that permits this accession will be signed by us here in some moments ahead. On another note of gratitude, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister, His Excellency Dr. Denzil Douglas, and the members of his cabinet to be with us all the way along this visit and to permit us to exchange views on some very interesting aspects of the bilateral relationship, but also of the relations between Brazil and CARICOM as a whole. Going back to the Latin American Integration Association now, ALADI was constituted in 1980 as a successor of Latin America Free Trade Association, ALAUC, established by another Montevideo Treaty in 1960. Our integration process has therefore over 50 years of existence. ALADI was established by the Treaty of Montevideo of 1980, and it is based on the principles of flexibility, progressive convergence, and pluralism, which allow its member countries different paces of reciprocal concessions according to their own possibilities and interests. Moreover, the treaty is a legal framework which ensures that concessions negotiated thereunder are consistent with the multilateral trade rules as defined by the World Trade Organization. Basically, the treaty establishes two main kinds of agreements: regional agreements and partial scope agreements. A regional agreement comprises all member countries of ALADI. A partial scope agreement involves some but not all member countries. We are now going to sign exactly the second type of agreement, the partial scope agreement. With a view to fostering regional integration, Article 25 of the treaty, under which our agreement with St. Kitts and Nevis is covered, allows member countries to negotiate partial agreements with non-member developing countries. Apart from trade agreements proper, the association undertakes initiatives and maintains ongoing discussions in other trade-related areas. One recent initiative, for example, is the development of a digital certification of origin, which reduces costs of business transactions, enhances the efficiency of processing the certificates themselves, and provides more security for trade deals and increases transparency. ALADI also maintains its own goods nomenclature, the customs nomenclature of ALADI Harmonized System, or NALADI-HS, based on the World Customs Organization Harmonized System, which allows members to properly benefit from negotiated preferences to levy correct taxes on economic operators, and it also helps the Secretary General to generate reliable trade statistics. Allow me to recall some rather eloquent figures. Intra-ALADI trade in 2011, last year, in the midst of the current international large economic financial crisis, peaked to 153 billion US dollars, a figure 22% higher than the 125 billion US dollars that was seen in 2010. Another figure which is very impacting, 70% of intra-regional trade in 2010 took place under the framework of the Aladi agreements. 73% of the trade preferences in force among Aladi member countries has already reached the 100% mark. And as for Brazil, and this is really important for us, as for Brazil, 86% of our exports to the entire region in 2010 have benefited from preferential treatment negotiated under Aladi agreements. So for us in the region, Aladi is really a very powerful tool to promote trade for Brazil. Last but not least, and this is very significant to you that are beginning to be one of the athletes inside the market in Brazil, last but not least, the population of member countries of Aladi represents a market of around 500 million inhabitants. It's a very, very huge market. These figures surely account for much of the interests that the association has raised in our continent. With the accession of Panama, recent accession of Panama, and the imminent incorporation of Nicaragua, we are soon going to be 14 member countries. Currently, Aladi is composed by the following 12 members: Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, Venezuela, and Uruguay. Panama, as I said, is concluding its ratification process these days. I'd like to remind you that the treaty is open to, and Aladi looks forward to strengthening the economic and trade relations with all developing nations in our continent. Therefore, the vision of integration embraced in the treaty is not limited to the current member countries of Aladi. In fact, we have set for ourselves in Article 1, or Article 1st of this treaty, the goal of promoting economic and social development in a harmonious and well-balanced pattern with the long-term objective of creating a truly region-wide common market. And this is very important. There is a debate, or there was a debate, about which would come first, the common market or the development process. It is now well established that the common market will be a result of this development process, and this development process has to be a well-balanced, as I said, and harmonious process. Even so, Aladi has been long associated with trade agreements. The organization actually promotes activities in other areas related to regional integration and development. One of the areas in which we favor an ever-growing commitment is the mitigation of all types of asymmetries among the member countries, one of the main challenges to the further advancement of integration in our region. If not dealt with, such asymmetries may hinder our joint capacity to deepen the integration process and ultimately may determine a slower pace in our regional integration progress, because the whole of the countries will go ahead at the lowest speed. And this lowest speed is determined, or is a consequence, of the less developed of the developing countries which are integrated in the process of the association. I wish to point out that Aladi is equipped with instruments to deal with this serious challenge. The treaty, in its Article 15, establishes that the member countries with less relative economic development will be granted favorable treatment based on non-reciprocity and communitarian cooperation. This mandate finds expression in measures such as non-reciprocal market access list of conceptions, LAMPs, as the acronym in Portuguese, and several cooperation initiatives, especially those focused on small and medium enterprises. We are convinced that the goals of the treaty can only be achieved if we bring on board all of our member countries so that we all take advantage from the benefits of integration. I'd like to mention, for example, a special treatment we concede to the less developing or developed countries we have inside the association. The general origin system of the association demands that 50% of the value of each product is added to the product locally in the country which is produced that product. In the case of the less developed countries, this ratio changes to 60-40, which is easier for the less developing countries or the less developed countries to achieve this ratio, more favorable ratio to obtain or to benefit from the concessions established by the treaty. It's one example. Another example is that for these kind of countries, it is established that you have or you may have preferences which are based on non-reciprocity. And this also is a very important feature of the treaty which of interest for the less developing countries. And a theme, a subject we talked yesterday, Mr. Prime Minister, in the evening we had yesterday, it is that there is a program inside the association to further create and offer the possibility of market access to exports from the less developing countries inside the association. And in the case of Brazil, we are just finishing a study, and we can, and surely we will do it, offer you the results of this study in the next months of how CARICOM countries, and especially St. Kitts and Nevis, can be or can profit from the opportunities that there are in the Brazilian market, to access to the market and to be present there. It's not easy to export to Brazil, I have to say. But if you have the right tools, if you establish the right contacts, and if you go to the right distribution channels in Brazil, you can access really to the country and to the market. It's very important. And I hope this agreement we are going to sign in some minutes ahead will be one of these powerful tools to you to access to Brazilian markets. The main message I would like to convey to you today is that the signature of this important protocol with Brazil could be just the first step in the rapprochement process between St. Kitts and Nevis and the Latin American Integration Association. I am convinced that this process will be mutually beneficial to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and the people of the nations, all member countries that will form the association. Thank you very much.